sensitive question. I can always. Okay, that's Tina recording. I'll start recording after I share. Hope everybody's having a good week so far. The next version of this is going to be Monday night, which I realized was Memorial Day after I scheduled it, but I know that a lot of people don't necessarily have any big plans that would preclude that. Yeah, we got 4 more registrations in the last 10 minutes, and that probably means that some people who are using the registration link to join the meeting. It's one nice thing about Zoom registration. If you can't find your link, you can always register again, and instead of sending you a registration link, it takes you straight into the meeting. Just Linda. All right, 2 more minutes and I'll kick it off. I guess I might as well share my screen and get my windows all rearranged. Whenever you share a screen in Zoom, it always rearranges all your windows for you. I gotta fix that.
Should we be logged into a website to follow along?
Nope,
Okay,
nope.
thank you.
I will. I'm sharing the slides, and I will be sending these slides to everybody immediately after the meeting, so you don't have to take screenshots or do anything interactive.
Thank you.
It's enough to do just to follow along. There's a lot of stuff in this. Looks like we got 22 so far. That's a pretty good turnout out of 30 that registered. Oh, at 12:05. All right, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Pathways Quick Overview. That name is perhaps a little dated. When I first put this together, it was really quick, but as the presentation has grown and as the new Basecamp came out last year, it's not as quick as it used to be. But let me just say right up front, I'm going to be sending this presentation to everyone after we're finished, so you don't have to take copious notes. And in fact, I'm not really going to present this. What I'm really going to do is give you a guided tour through this presentation, a walkthrough. There's far too much information in this to just present it to everybody. And frankly, nobody has an attention span that long. As we found out from one of our keynotes in the conference this weekend, most people don't have an attention span more than about 15 minutes. And we've got 3 hours worth of material that I'm going to rush through in about 50 minutes. So there's no way you're going to be able to focus in depth on it. And so for that reason, I'm just going to move real fast. And I suggest that you don't try to focus in depth. You try to just sort of get a feel for what the overall flow of the presentation is, which parts of it are of interest to you initially, and then go back and look at those parts after we finish. This way, it will do different things for different people. We have some brand new Toastmasters in this that'll just be looking for the real basics, how to get started. We've got some advanced Toastmasters in here that have been around for many years that might want to see some of the more advanced features. But I'm going to try to just go through everything quickly, mainly just to show you what is here, but not necessarily to present it to you. Every now and then, I will not be able to resist the temptation to talk a little bit about some of it. So hopefully that won't happen too often. So let's move right into it. I always start every presentation with the why question. Why are we here in Toastmasters? Really, why do we do anything? And I think there's four main reasons. We have an opportunity to learn, practice new things. We have an opportunity to meet and interact with people. Some people like to see this as a way of sharing their message, to express yourself, or to help others do these things. The idea is we're talking about pathways here because pathways provides a framework to help people meet their goals and to measure their progress. Really, that's all there is to it. Pathways is part of the why of Toastmasters. It helps you meet your goals, pure and simple. So I'm going to go real quickly through some of these slides. We got a few slides at the beginning that talk about vision. So you might want to think about why you joined, what kind of speaker you want to be, what do you want to talk about, and what kind of leader do you want to be? And I believe everyone is a leader of some type. You see a few types mentioned here. Might be worth spending a few minutes with this slide later if you haven't really thought about these things. I always talk about the fact that Toastmasters is a journey. Just like any journey in life, it starts off with coming up with some goals. Why did you embark on this journey? What do you hope to gain? What kind of journey do you want? Do you want a quick journey where you get from A to B in as fast as possible? Or do you want to savor the journey, scenic route? What are you going to do along the way? What sort of projects are you going to pick along this journey to gain specific things like knowledge or skills? And ultimately, what kind of results do you want to see when you're down the road on this journey? What sort of abilities do you want to gain? That's the what type of speaker do I want to be, or what type of leader do I want to be? And once again, I want to let people know that Pathways is not a roadmap. It's not an itinerary. It's just more of a travel guide. It's an idea of some things you can see along the way, some things you can do along the way. It's not prescriptive, it's descriptive. It gives you ideas, not necessarily specific direction. A lot of people tend to overthink Pathways from that respect. Here's a simple definition of Pathways. And right off the bat, I want to say Pathways is the content of the program, not the website. Those are two really separate things. So Pathways describes the things you can do. And it's really a learning framework. It provides a selectable set of experiences, which we call projects and speeches. And they're grouped in themes that we call paths. And it's highly customizable to address a variety of goals. And that's really all it is in a nutshell. So simple message, don't overthink Pathways. Now I'll go into some more detail for the people who are not big picture oriented, who really want to know some details. And I'm not going to dwell on this. I'm going to go through it quickly, but you can go back and see this if you really want to know what it looks like under the covers. It's built on 5 competencies that look like this, and it's rendered in 11 different paths that look like this. And you'll see that each path is a mix of the different competencies. Some of them are no longer available. They're called legacy paths, and we'll talk more about those. Each path has 15 projects and 5 levels. What's a project? Project is something to learn, something to do, and something to talk about. And that's something to really think about, because you might just think of a project as a speech, but there's a little bit more to it than that. There's things you can read to learn something specific that may help you in your speech, something to do, which often involves more than just the speech, and then finally the speech itself. So it's always a read, write, speak component to pretty much every project in Pathways, part of the learning experience. And we have electives to help you customize your journey. Not going to dwell on this much at all, other than just to show you that there are 5 different levels that focus on different things. You'll see more about that if you want to zoom in on it later yourself. Okay. There's 4 different groupings of paths when you go about choosing your path. And I always advise people not to, overanalyze these paths. It's not really a big deal. If you don't like a path you choose, you can always choose another if you trade it in within 30 days. But they're in 4 basic groups, a group that's mostly focused on speaking, some light leadership projects, moderate, and some more strong leadership projects. You can see here that there are 6 paths that are continuing, the ones in black, and 5 paths that are no longer available for purchase for new members. But if you're an older member, a veteran member who has been around a while, you can continue working those legacy paths, as they're now called. This is one way of looking through paths to see what they're all about. It's a catalog. A lot of people don't really like to go online and try to browse through these things on the Pathways website, because it's not a real easy website to browse. Here's a catalog that's nothing more than a PDF file that you can download, and you can just skim through them. If you want to see, for example, what's in the presentation mastery path, you just click that on the first page. It takes you to a page where you can see the full page, the full breadth of this particular path. It shows all 5 levels, all required projects, and all electives in every level. And it's really a path at a glance, so to speak. Great way of just sort of seeing what all is in the path. You can sort of look ahead to see what electives you might want to choose, what projects are coming down the road. And if you see a project and you want to know more about that project, you can click any given project and it'll take you to a full page on that project.
We're gonna send it back to the customer. So I'm gonna have somebody.
Okay. Mute there. I need to co-host somebody, I guess. But at any rate, you've got a back button right here that you can go back to the previous page or you can go back to the first page. But this is a link up here to download this. And when I send you the email afterwards, I will include this catalog as part of the email. Great resource, highly recommended. I'm not going to dwell on this at all. This is another way of looking at paths where you look at different types of projects and the different emphasis for each level. So if you're interested in this kind of thing, you can look at it. The key thing to see on this is that there's 3 required projects in every path that really define that path's DNA, that really, the paths are all the same really, except for those 3 required projects. And here is a list of those 3 required projects that might be pretty useful when you're selecting a path. You can see the 4 different groupings of paths here. And here is a list of all of the required projects at levels 3, 4, and 5 for each path. So this is a real handy chart. This is probably one of the most valuable charts in the deck when you want to look at maybe choosing your first or choosing your next path. And if you're you can't choose any of these purple ones as your next path, but this shows what they are if you already own one of them. So before going on, I've talked quite a bit about just pathways, a quick overview, the paths. Any questions so far about paths or projects? I'll talk a little bit more about projects, but not too much more about the choice of a path, except later on when I show navigation, I'll show you how to go in and pick one. Any questions or comments so far?
I have a question. Hey, Jim.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that we have 30 days if we wanted to change our path. How do we do that if we wanted to switch?
You just either call World Headquarters or send an email to World Headquarters. The links are on the Toastmasters site. The only thing is you have to make sure that you have not completed any of the projects on that path or haven't completed a level on that path to be able to trade it in.
Cool, thank you.
Gives you a good way though, to buy one, look it over in more detail if you like. Good question. All right, let's move on a little bit. I wanted to show you what a typical path looks like once you get into the projects within a path. This is perhaps useful for people who are brand new. You start off with level 1, and there are 4 projects in this level. It's got an icebreaker to introduce yourself, and then a couple of skills building projects, and ending with one where you give a speech twice and get evaluations each time, and then give an evaluation. So this project requires 2 speeches. So there are 5 speeches total in level 1. Level 2 is learning about yourself, communication style, and some more skill building. Different paths have different projects for these 2 right here, but every path has this mentoring as a mentee. And this is not really about mentoring. It's kind of a misnomer. It's really more about what it was like to learn from someone else, what it was like to be a mentee. And this is a project that a lot of people love because you get to talk about someone who inspired you somewhere along the line. Perhaps you didn't even realize they were a mentor at the time. And finally, level 3, persuasive speaking is required, but every project you saw in that every path has a specific required project at this level, plus 2 electives, and there are 14 electives to choose from. Here's a list of those 14 electives, and you can see those in the catalog as well. Now, some people would like a more simplified version of this, and so I'm just going to show this really quickly because it's only really going to be real meaningful to people who have been around a while. Back in the old days, we had something called the CC, the Competent Communicator, and people loved this because it told them what 10 speeches you had to do. You didn't have to make any choices. For people who really liked that, it's really easy to map that into a pathways path. For example, presentation mastery. Here's how that old CC might map into a new pathways path. So for those who remember the CC or maybe just want, here's some recommendations for which ones to choose to get started. Here's something to consider. Of course, you can always customize every Pathways project. This is one of the things I meant earlier when I said that it's just a framework. A lot of people tend to overthink these Pathways projects. They'll go in and say, well, it says I have to do this. Therefore, I have to do every one of these things. Really, most of these Pathways project objectives are just suggestions. They're guidelines, they're ideas for how to do a project to learn about a specific thing, but you can customize these a lot. Customize it to meet your needs. You can also do these in any order across any path. So if you own multiple paths, which is really a good idea once you get going to have several paths, to have more projects to choose from, you can do them in whatever order you want. If you're brand new, you probably want to do the first couple levels in somewhat in sequence, but even there, then it's not required. A lot of times people will start out as a brand new member and they'll say, okay, here's a project. How am I going to come up with a speech for that? And they'll say, okay, here's another project. How am I going to come up with a speech for that? And at some point, they turn this corner and they say, I've got a speech. How can I find a project for that? So whenever you get to the point where you're actually coming up with your speech topic first, then finding a project, you'll know that you've turned a corner. You've reached a milestone there. You can always add additional things to any project, and you can even modify the timing just a little bit if your VPE agrees that it'll fit within the meeting structure. Bottom line, it's your path, your journey. You use these things as a travel guide, not as an itinerary. What about recognition? Of course, the ultimate recognition is Distinguished Toastmaster, but there are rewards along the way. To get to Distinguished Toastmaster, you will first complete 2 paths. Well, you don't have to do it first, but along the way, you will complete 2 full paths, and you actually get a recognition award at each level. So you'll get 10 awards as you complete each of your 5 levels in your 2 paths. There's also 4 leadership assignments on the road to DTM, and as well as a capstone project that you can either do before or after these. After you've nearly finished with your second path, you can do your capstone project, which is just a big project. It used to be called the High Performance Leadership Project in the old program, just something to benefit an organization, something to do, make the world a better place, if you will. 4 leadership projects. You'll be a club officer for 12 months, a district officer for 12 months. You'll either be a club mentor or a club coach somewhere along the way, and you'll conduct one of these 3 programs. You'll be a sponsor, do a speechcraft, or do a youth leadership program. When you've done these 4 projects, completed 2 paths, and a capstone project, you qualify to be DTM, and you'll get to receive your award in a grand ceremony. If you haven't seen that ceremony, it's quite impressive. So that is recognition. That is the Pathways program itself. Everything but the navigation, which we'll talk about next. Any questions about Pathways concepts, Pathways program itself? Hopefully those were some good concepts to ponder and give you something to go back and look in more detail at later.
I have a question. Hi, my name is Terry. I'm with Toastmasters, Electric Toasters out of Irving.
Yeah,
Listen to me with all those. I'm sorry.
go ahead.
My question is the DM project. Can you describe what that would be or how that would look?
Well, the DTM project, some people will be a contest coordinator for that. But usually it's something that is a little bit bigger than that. Maybe you might design a new education program for something, and it doesn't have to be Toastmasters. If you're a member of Rotary, you could do a Rotary project and let that be your DTM project. It's mainly something you want to get an advisory board for to help you. In my case, I am doing this series of presentations as my DTM project. I am just about finished with my DTM. I'll be hopefully receiving that in November. There's been a wide variety of things. One of my members in my club created a way to help coach speakers who are in contests. We called it a speakers lab workshop, and we've shared that with other clubs. That was her DTM project. So it's really just any sort of project that can benefit more than just your local club. Does that help?
Yes, that does. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And Mona.
So Jim, is there a time limit as far as, say someone's been working on their DTM for years? The project, the capstone project, say they have volunteered as a contest coordinator, or does that like have a time limit where you can't use it for your DTM, or is it okay that you did it 2 years ago and you still want to use it or something?
No time limit, no statute of limitations for any of the leadership projects. For the speeches, if someone was active in the old program, the competent communicator or advanced communicator bronze or so forth, those speeches no longer qualify, but those are speeches. In terms of all the leadership stuff, there's no time limit. And some people, we had somebody just last week who got their DTM in just 3 years, which is pretty quick. I've been in the organization more than 20 years and I haven't gotten my first DTM yet. And so, anybody can go as long as they need to on these programs. It's self-paced. Good question, though.
Hi, Jim. This is Chrissy. I had a question that's not DTM related, but is pathway related. I had you said earlier about when you have a speech and then you find a path for it. I did that recently through one of my pathways, or through the pathway I'm working on, and I finished level 2, but it wouldn't let me complete it because I hadn't finished level 1. Why is that in place? And is there a workaround on that?
Yeah, no, there's not a workaround, and I'll talk about that a little bit more during the navigation part. But the levels, you can do the speeches in any order you want to, but you have to receive the awards in order. So you can finish the levels and you can submit a completion, but you won't receive the award until you've done the previous levels. So a lot of times people will just kind of be, it's kind of like, I like to think of it as like a bingo card. You can do things all over the bingo card, and then sooner or later you're going to, make one column fit, and then that will be that level, and then the next level, and then the next level. But that's the way it was meant to work. Originally, when Pathways first came out, you couldn't even look at the next level. You actually had to do the projects in order. But now you can do the projects in any order. You just have to take the awards in order. And I'll talk a little bit more about the difference between awards and completions later. But that's a good question, and it's designed that way.
Thank you, Jim.
All right, let's move into the second half of this, which I call a quick look at navigation. And I call it a quick look because you just really can't teach navigation by PowerPoint. The best I can do is just give you some screenshots and some road maps and tell you these are the screens. You'll have to actually go in and wander around, navigation by wandering around. But I think once you see the fact that there's not that many places you can be and see what the big picture is, it might help you avoid being a little bit more overwhelmed. And the new Basecamp that came out last October is much easier to navigate than the old one was. So let's kick this off. First of all, once again, that distinction between Pathways and Basecamp. Pathways is the framework. It's the project speeches and paths. Basecamp is the website. It's highly interactive. That's where you can consume the content, so to speak. There's so many different learning resources, and there's some very good ones now that didn't used to be here. When this new Basecamp came out, they published 2 different sets of learning resources, one in video and one in PDF that are excellent. So different people have different learning styles. Some people like to attend an interactive presentation like this where they can ask questions. Some people don't mind watching videos, and this video that I'm pointing to here is an excellent video. If you do nothing else, that 15-minute video would be worth looking at. I'll probably eventually publish a version of this presentation as a video someday. But if you are a reader style, there's also, and I'm saying there's a 15-minute video, and at the bottom of this same page, there's a 60-minute webinar video that's even better. There's also detailed written instructions. There's a 60-page user guide and a Basecamp manager guide that if you want to go, with step-by-step, with screenshot by screenshot, those are available too. So there's really reference materials to meet pretty much every need. So I'm saying this to basically say, you don't need what I'm telling you here today if you want to go back to one of these videos, and you can find this link in the presentation. So lots of great resources, but let's go through what I have here. What changed in November or in October? The pathways didn't really change at all, except for they went from 11 paths down to 6. And once again, this is what this looks like. This shows the 6 that are continuing and the 5 that are now legacy. So that was really the only change to the program. Most of the changes were to the website, Basecamp. It's a lot more intuitive now. You can access it from a phone. You couldn't do that before. There's more ways to get evaluation forms, which I'll show you briefly. Level completions are easier to submit and to designate a recipient club. In the old days, before this change, it was always complicated when you submitted a level to figure out which club was going to get credit for it and so forth. That's easier now. You don't have to submit it twice. Basecamp managers used to have to do 2 approvals. They approved it once in Basecamp and once in Club Central. Now that's only done once in Basecamp, and it's automatically done in Club Central. And Chrissy, that's why they have to be done now in order. They had to be done in order before. And it's much simpler to administer Basecamp. It's pretty much one-stop shopping for Basecamp manager approvals. There's some new options coming in the future, and the future is still in the future. We thought they would be here by now. They're not. We'll find out more about this thing called Explorations, perhaps in the next year. When you first come to log in, you go to your My Home page, and if it doesn't take you straight there, you can always click the welcome sign and click My Home, and it takes you to My Toastmasters Home. This didn't change in October. This has always been this way, and you always have gotten to Basecamp that way. But when you're there, you can go immediately to Basecamp here. If you want to, if you're an officer and want to go to Club Central, you get there here like you did before. When you want to choose your path, your first path or an additional path, you go here, and we'll show that next. And you can go here to see your awards. So let's look at the Learning Hub. When you want to choose a path, you click there, you choose path. If you're a new member, that first path is free. If you've already had your free path, additional paths are $20. You click that, and it will take you through a series of questions where you choose what kind of way you want it delivered, and really paper is no longer an option. Choose your language. English is probably what you most of you want. You can choose to take an assessment where it will ask you some questions and it'll recommend a few paths. It'll recommend 3 paths based on those questions, or you can just look at that chart that I showed earlier that shows what the required projects in each path are, which gives you a good idea of the flavor. Or you can do all of those before you choose your path. Once you've decided what path you want to choose, you just go through this and go to this next screen and pick one of the paths and say enroll, and you're in it. As I said earlier, if you want to change your mind before you've completed anything, you can do that as well. So this is the screen that shows the mechanics of actually choosing the path and enrolling in that path. So you might want to come back to this when you're ready to choose your first or your next path. This slide will be in the deck to help guide you. It's pretty intuitive. Now here's the big picture of pathways related navigation. I'm showing on the left on the Toastmasters International site, when you first log in on that home page and you click go to Basecamp, you'll go initially to this page in Basecamp, which is called the Learning Dashboard. And this page is where you show all of your paths. If you only have one path, if you're new, if you don't have any paths, you can't even get here until you have chosen your path. You can't even go to Basecamp without choosing that first path. But once you've chosen that first path, you'll go here and it'll show you on your learning dashboard every path that you own. And you can click one of those paths and it will show you an overview of that path. It'll show you all 5 levels, and you can expand any of those levels to see the projects in that level. So it's a good way of kind of browsing through the levels and the projects within a level without opening any of the projects. And then finally, you can click on one of the projects and open that project. And from within that project, you still have that navigator on the left. So you still see all that overview stuff, but it expands the projects to where you can see all of the pages within that project. So it's kind of a series of expand and contract all of the different menus on that left side navigator. But within this realm, you can see, somebody's calling me, I'm going to let that ring. You can see that there's only really 4 places you can be. You can be in the TI site, in your My Home page. You can be in your learning dashboard to see all your paths. You can be in the path overview page to see all of the levels in that path, or you can be within a particular project. And those are really the only places you can be. So that really simplifies things quite a bit there. If you're a little bit overwhelmed by navigation, just to know that there's really only 4 kinds of places you can be. And once you're in those, hopefully it's fairly intuitive when there. But I'm going to show you each of those 3 places on the right side within Pathways, within Basecamp, I'm sorry. For example, starting with the learning dashboard, this is a bigger picture of the learning dashboard, and you can see that you always enter on your Paths and Learning tab. It shows all your paths. There are also additional tabs. You can always come back to this page by clicking here or by clicking here. You can always return to your learning dashboard by clicking this logo. So if you get lost, click that logo and it'll take you back to this page. You also have a page here for evaluations. This is a place you can go to get evaluations. You can look at your profile. You can go back to your home, Toastmasters home, My Home, or you can see all of the members of all your clubs by looking right here. So there's a lot of things you can go, and these things at the top are present anywhere you are within Pathways. So you always have ways of getting to any of the places you may want to go from within Basecamp. Let's take a quick look at the evaluations page. This is a little bit busy. I always hate to show this, but just because there's way too much information on this page. But if you go to this page and study it a little while, you'll realize that there's mainly a link here that where you can download the PDF versions of these forms, or there's a link here where you can send the form electronically to an evaluator, and there's a link where you can fill out the evaluation electronically and send it to the speaker. And that's something I really need to put together a whole presentation on, this send form to speaker and send form to evaluator. If you find this stuff fairly intuitive, you might want to visit this page and look around. Otherwise, you still have the ability to download the PDFs just like you did before. I don't really want to go into too much detail on this because it's like I say, it's a whole presentation within itself. But any quick questions on this? Okay, good. It's worth looking at, though. These are nice
Jim,
features.
quick question.
Sure, go ahead.
Quick question, Jim. Can you send the evaluation to more than one person?
No, well,
Because agendas change, and your evaluator may change the day of the meeting. You need to resend it.
You can't send it to more than one person at once, but you could certainly come back to this page, click this again, and pick a different person and send it again. Yes. And there are other ways to do this. I'll show you later. This is not the easiest way to send a form to an evaluator. But the one limitation for this is that it has to be someone in one of your clubs. If you have a guest evaluator from another club, you cannot use this to send it to them unless the person you're sending it to is a member of one of your clubs. It doesn't have to be the club you're in. You just have to be a member of you and that person have to be in the same club somewhere. So there, see, I've already gone and made it complicated. It's got some nice functionality. It's got a few limitations. You just got to live with this a little bit. It's a neat page. It's a neat new feature, but it's totally new last October. And I don't really know how widely used it is, but once you get the hang of this, it is kind of handy. All right, let's move on. I want to get off that page. This is the path overview page that I mentioned earlier. This is the place where you can see all of your levels and see all of the projects in any level. Once you go to this page, you can expand any one of the levels and see the projects within that level. Some people find this a little bit confusing because when you first expand a level, it only shows the required project and then it shows electives. In order to see the electives, all of the electives, you then have to expand electives and choose one of them to include here. So in this case, I've expanded the electives and I've picked one of them to include here. And then here's the other thing, that this level 3 completion, that will not be grayed out when you have finally satisfied the requirements for that level, which also includes finishing the previous levels. So this is a good way of coming into a path gently to sort of see the big picture of a path, to see all of the different levels. But then once you open a project within that level, you'll still have access to all those clicks you had on the overview, but you'll also have access to every page within a project. So the nice thing about projects is that you can go through them in order just by going page to page to page. You can use this previous or next button to go page to page and just sort of read it like you would read a manual. You can jump around in there by just choosing something from the navigator on the left. You can do some interactive things within these projects. So the very first page of every project is your resources page where you can download your evaluation. So if you want to download the PDF evaluation and then send it to somebody like you did before, this is where you would get it. You can also download the entire project. I think, oops, go back up here. You can download the entire project if you want to by using this button called Print the Project. That takes the entire project into a PDF file. So if you don't really want to read page by page online, you can download it as a PDF and just read the whole thing offline. It's also a good way of preserving what you've done after you've done a project if you want to keep it forever and ever. So this is your typical project of a new path, of an updated current path, not a legacy path. I'll stop here. Like I say, you're not going to get all this the first time you see it. I'm just introducing you to the fact that this information is here. But for those who have experienced this, any questions about navigation for projects, for new projects? Like I say, you'll want to download the PowerPoint and study these things if you haven't really gone into this yet. Right, let's move on ahead. 12:37, I'm doing all right. One of the neat new features is this thing called a speech log. As you look down the pages within a project, on the next to last page of a project, you have this, well, really the last page, the first part of this last complete your project section is a speech log. This is optional, you don't have to do it. But if you want to put this information for your records, you can put your speech title and the date you gave the speech, what club you gave the speech in, who your evaluator was, which evaluation form you want them to use, and even write a little message to them. And this is the other way that Alonzo was referring to earlier of sending a evaluation form to an evaluator. You can pick that evaluator from any club you're a member of, and then just click send email, and it will email the electronic evaluation form to that evaluator. They'll see all of this information, including whatever message you have down here. And it's a really nice way of sending an evaluation form to somebody that is in one of your clubs who's going to evaluate you. But like I said, this is, and then if you don't want to use the email thing, you just click save log and it'll save all this and you'll have all that information saved, which is something you couldn't do before. So this is a handy feature. There's a bug in the system right now. Some of you have discovered it. Hopefully none of the rest of you will. They lost some of these for people that did it right after the change was made. A lot of people filled out these forms and saved them. And then they did an upgrade a couple of months later and they lost a bunch of them and looks like they're not coming back. So that's unfortunate. All right, that's a project log. Now, the next page after that project log is the marking the project complete. After you've given the speech, you've done everything you want to do with that speech, and you're ready to mark it as complete. All you have to do is go to this next page, or just reopen the project and go directly to this page down here that says complete your assignment, and click this button. So that's confirm. And that's all you have to do. In the old system, you had to go through an assessment, an after assessment, but you don't have to do that here. You just go straight to this page, click that confirm button, and that project is marked complete. Doesn't require any approvals, no action by the VPE. It's your project. You can mark projects complete yourself. You get a nice little confirmation when you do that. Sometimes people have thought they clicked the button, but they didn't get this confirmation. So I told them, go back and click the button and make sure the confirmation screen comes up. So, project completed. Any questions on that? Anybody had any issues completing projects? So then after you do that, after you've done all the projects in a level, you can mark the level as complete. And you'll know that you've done all the projects in a level when you can see this navigator over here. And when you go back to the overview, the path overview, you'll see a green check mark by each of your projects. The other way you'll know that you've done all of your projects is this button won't be grayed out anymore. Whenever you have completed everything required to submit that level for a completion award, you'll be able to select which club you want to give that award to if you're in multiple clubs, and then just click submit. This greatly simplifies the club selection. Before, you had to basically tell the person, hey, I want to give this award to this club, so you approve it when I submit it. And you had to set your current club to that. No longer, you just select your club and click submit. We no longer have the concept of a home club in Basecamp anymore, which is a great improvement. If you think you've done everything and this thing is still grayed out, then you either have failed to mark one of your projects as complete, or you have failed to complete the prior levels. So, and once you submit this, once you click submit, your VPE and your president and your secretary will be notified, and they can approve that completion. Any questions about this? This is sometimes is a little bit confusing. Brady.
You mentioned something about president, vice president, education secretary will see that when you mark complete, and that is true. However, all officers now have access to Basecamp in your club. Yeah. So even though an officer has access, it doesn't mean they can see it when it's completed. Only the ones Jim mentioned can see it.
Yeah, and
that's all.
They won't get, only those 3 officers will be notified, but any of them can see the completion request if they go into Basecamp manager screen and go to the approvals tab. They'll see the request. But as I like to say during Basecamp manager training, just because every officer can approve levels doesn't mean they all should approve levels. Officers need to have an understanding among themselves as who is the primary officer who is going to approve and who's the alternate. And other officers generally should not approve completions unless they're specifically asked to usually by either the president or by the VPE. that your understanding, Brady? Yeah.
Sorry, I had to unmute. Yes, no, that is true. And if you ever are not the VP of E and you approve something, it's recommended to email all the other officers what you did to let them know about it. And
Right.
because people take vacations, people have a leave of absence.
Yeah.
It does happen. But yeah,
Yeah.
just because it's new and they changed it where all officers can now see base camp and help with base camp, it doesn't mean they should. Just
Yeah.
a personal opinion.
Yeah. Yeah, that old famous saying, just because you can do something doesn't mean you always should. All right. Well, that's marking is complete. So, and that's where it's done right there with that submit button. And I'll talk just briefly about legacy projects. For those of you who are new since October, you don't ever see a legacy project and won't ever see a legacy project and count yourself lucky. But for people who have been around a while and still have some of those legacy paths that they bought and are still using, they look the same as they did before, which is to say, rather ugly and confusing. But they still have the same functionality as they had before. And you use them the same way you did before, except you have to use them in full screen now. You can't even put them in a large window. It has to be full screen. But it still works the same way as it did before. Here's how to get into full screen mode. When you get to the end of a legacy project, you still have this resource page where you can download your evaluation, print the project to download it to PDF. And then the next page will be the place where you can do the after assessment and then click the submit button to submit. You have to complete the after assessment and click the submit button to mark a legacy project as complete, just like you did before. Now, some people, this is something that was more relevant before the new Basecamp than it is now, but there are a lot of people who really did not like going online, especially if they were working from a phone and it didn't work on the phone. But you still have the option, if you really, really don't want to work online, you can always choose those projects that you want to do in a path, go online one time and download the full PDF using the Print My Project. Track all your speeches in an offline document, which I'll show you in a moment. And then go online when you've finished all of them and mark them all complete and then submit the approval. You only have to go online once to download them all and once to do them again. In doing that, you really miss a lot though. But for people who do not want to go online or can't easily go online, this is an option. This is a thing that you can use if you're working offline. Actually, even if you're working online, this is rather handy because if you've been around a while and have many paths going and you kind of tend to forget what project you did and which club and what you called it and when you did it, this is a spreadsheet that you can download and you can use that to track your progress in each of your paths. It's also a pretty good planning tool. It's essentially the same information as in that catalog, but it's presented in a spreadsheet where you can actually annotate. You can put speech titles and dates and clubs in here. You can also use it to look ahead at what's coming down the road, pick which electives you're going to do. It's a good way of using that to not do too many electives. Some people get carried away. You only have to do 2 electives at level 3. Some people have done 3 or 4 by the time they realize, wow, I didn't have to do all those electives. Maybe I should have put those in another path. So it's a useful planning and tracking tool for people who like spreadsheets, which I do. Here's a link to download that, and here's another link to download the catalog. There are a lot of different versions of this on the D25 site that are also in PDF form if you'd prefer to use a fillable PDF where you only have 1 file per path, 1 file per path. This spreadsheet has a separate tab for each path. So another resource for those who like this kind of stuff. Pretty much finished. I'm going to summarize here and then we'll go into a quick Q&A and I'll show you some more links to some more resources. Before I hit the summary of how to complete projects, levels, and awards, any questions? Anything I failed to talk about? I'm sure there are.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Pratita.
This is regarding the evaluations. So when you send evaluations via Pathways Basecamp situation, would they get a link to download the evaluation resource, or do they have to fill that online?
They filled it out online. I don't think there is a link to download the PDF. The whole point of the electronic evaluations is to avoid having to download PDFs and emailing PDFs around and all that kind of stuff. So I don't believe I've ever looked carefully at that page to see if there's some little link somewhere tucked away in the corner to download the PDF, but I don't think there is. It generally, it sends them an email. It says, click here to fill out the form. It takes you directly to a page that has an electronic version of that form. You fill it out online, click send, and the form goes into the speaker's Basecamp, and they can access it online, so it's never downloaded. You are able to print that. The speaker can print that form, and if they want to save it, they just do a print as PDF, and that way it'll essentially download it as PDF. And so I guess really anybody that has something online can always use the print as PDF function built into Windows to it's kind of a quick and dirty way of downloading something that's only online. Does that help?
Yes, absolutely. And that's exactly what I was trying to get at, because I like to hold on to my evaluations and I don't want to log in each time to figure out what someone said in their feedback.
Yeah, and that's very valid. And same thing, with your certificates. I don't show that here, but I do in the Basecamp Manager training about how to download certificates for people, because once you've completed a level, you get a nice little certificate, and you can download your own certificate. You can print your own certificate, but in many clubs, the VPE will download that certificate printed on nice paper and present it as an award in a meeting, which is a good way to do that. But I'm a big fan of downloading things because, heaven forbid, if you ever leave Toastmasters, you'll lose access to all that stuff. So it's definitely worth downloading, the things, even downloading the projects to preserve, as later references. So good point. Good point. All right, just summarizing real quick, to do completions, because this is always the thing that people often come here for, is how do I finish things? How do I complete things? And for members, when they complete a project, if it's a continuing a current project, you just simply go to that complete your assessment screen and click confirm. That's all there is to it. You open the project, go to that particular screen and click confirm. Boom, you're done. For legacy discontinued projects, you complete the after assessment after that resources page and then click submit, just like you did before. Completing a level, it's the same for legacy and current projects. You just go to the level completion section of a project, select your club if you're in multiple clubs, and click submit. You're done. Bob's your uncle. I never understood that expression. Notify your VPE and Basecamp managers if you're in dual clubs. That's something that was more important before than it is now, because they're going to get notified, but still not a bad idea if you're in a situation where you're really giving this award to this club and this award to this club, and this club's trying to meet a deadline, that club's trying to meet a deadline. It's not a bad idea to keep everybody in the loop. Now for the Basecamp manager, some of you probably are Basecamp managers, and there's a separate training for this, but just to summarize, the Basecamp manager, which is usually VPE, but can be delegated to other officers informally. They're going to improve that level completion in Pathways Basecamp, and that automatically submits the award to Club Central, assuming that they're being submitted in sequential order. So that's pretty much, in a nutshell, how things are completed and awards are given. Any questions on that little sequence? This is my last slide before I go into my summary. Oh, it is 12:50. All right. Oh, okay. Here's one bonus slide for Basecamp managers. Here is a quick reference guide, and you can actually download with using this here. You can download a PDF quick reference guide for both Pathways, Basecamp, and Basecamp Manager quick overview. But in a quick nutshell, the Basecamp manager can get these things using these links. They can go to their main Basecamp manager dashboard here, and from here they can go to these 4 functions. Here's where they approve things. Here's where they see information about their members. Here's where they view the whole club's progress for each path the club is pursuing. And they can go and get a log of all activity that's been done recently by them or by other officers. So this is, in a nutshell, where a Basecamp manager lives and what they can do. And for many Basecamp managers who, have a lot of experience and are technically intuitive, this is all the instruction they need. But there is a full course for this as well. All right, summary. You started Pathways with some goals in mind. You found your journey, picked some things to do along the way, and hopefully have obtained some results. But it only starts if you take that first step. Many people join, they sit along the sidelines for a while and watch other people do it. But you have to take that first step. Encourage your members to take that first step. If you're a new member, get your feet wet, because we make these paths by walking them. I've got some Q&A time, 5 minutes, 10 maybe. I've got this link up here to the Basecamp Manager overview that I talked about. It's a PowerPoint very similar to this. That's that quick reference guide again I mentioned. You can download, I need to change the sequence of these animations, it looks like. You can download the latest version of this particular presentation at this link, and I'm going to email this link to you. This presentation evolves, and so I'll send you the current version of it. You'll be able to download future versions of it as improvements are made using this link right here. And then these are many other resources. I've mentioned pretty much all of these resources during the course of the presentation, but here they are just in one group. Pathways D25 website has some good resources. This navigator, I didn't talk about this. This is a great thing to send to new members. It's a great overview. Here's that catalog again. Here's that tracking spreadsheet again. This is the page for Pathways resources in TI, and it's a good reference because it even has full PDFs for all level 1 projects if you have people working offline or people who haven't chosen your path yet. By the way, you can go ahead and give a first speech, even more than one speech, without choosing your first path if you want to, because you can download those resources. Not always the best way to go, but it is possible, and an officer or a mentor can help you with that. All those videos I talked about are at this link. All those manuals, the PDF manuals, are at this link. Other information pages are here and here. So these are the resources. 12:53. I've got a few more minutes for questions, and I'm willing to stay on afterwards. So how did we do?
Jim, I know you said that there's a whole different presentation for Basecamp Manager, but I do have one question. Is there a way to export information? For example, pass in progress. I can't even see the whole screen. I have to scroll. So is there a way to do that? Is that included in any of the training?
Oh, you just hit on one of my big pet peeves. The simple answer is no. However, Paths in Progress is the single most useful report. It's the only useful report, frankly. The other useful reports are totally missing, and I am really unhappy about that because I had a mega spreadsheet built where I exported those reports from the old Pathways Basecamp, and I mishmashed them 50 different ways in using the magic of Excel and created some nice charts showing everybody's progress, which speeches were left uncompleted and all that stuff. I can no longer generate that because I can't download that information. The closest I can come is Paths in Progress, which is actually useful. And I have created a way of taking that screen, bringing it into PowerPoint, using some sort of quick and dirty manipulations and creating a Paths in Progress. And I probably should send that to people. For people who know Pathway, who know Excel pretty well, they'll understand my machinations. But I'm sorry that there's not a better way to do that because you really need to be able to do that. And hopefully someday that'll be fixed. Mona?
Sorry, I was trying to take myself off mute. Just quickly, so the Basecamp Manager is the VPE, so it's a singular role, right? Is that the
No,
only person?
All officers are Basecamp managers.
Okay, good. Okay, cool. Thank you.
I'll show you real quick. I'm going to go ahead and unshare this and share the thing that Chrissy was talking about. Can you see that? This is what I've done to download the Paths in Progress right here. And this is what that report looks like. So it kind of shows who's getting close, who have completed levels in those paths and so forth. And the way I create that is I take that Paths in Progress report and I copy paste it into this column, and I use these formulas to deconstruct this thing because it doesn't even paste very well. It's unfortunate that I have to do a couple of other weird things, but anyway, that's what I do for that. All right, we're coming up on our 1 o'clock time that I always like to stop by, but I have a few more minutes for questions, and then I wanted to stay on afterwards. Lorenzo.
Yeah, real quick. To follow up on Mona's question, it's if you're a VPE and you're the one responsible for approving, it's always good to have your backup assigned. And the reason why is because as VPE, you yourself are also doing speeches and completing levels.
Yeah.
Cannot complete your own level. So your
Right.
backup will be the one that needs to approve you. And again, if you're on vacation or away, your backup will take over. So it's great to establish that order of succession so that way you support each other and at the same time you have someone to back you up if you're not available.
Yeah. And I talk about when I train VPE on TLI, I talk extensively about that, kind of showing the pecking order of the officers and how important it is in your first officer meeting of a new Toastmasters year to establish who's going to back up who, because every officer needs a backup. VPM needs a backup because what if they're absent and then people visit the meeting? Secretary needs a backup. What happens if they're absent and something happens in the meeting? So having the VPE have an official backup, which is often the president, could be the secretary, but it could be any other officer, to approve those things and to approve the work the VPE does is so important, just to have communication and know who's on first. Rating.
Jim, just to point out something that was only in one slide. When you're in base camp and up in the top left corner, the Toastmaster logo, if you click on it, it will back you out to the main side of it. That is great for new members or people that are not familiar. In other words, go explore. If you get in the screen, you do not have to fill it out and click complete to continue on. You can use that logo up there to back out. Go look at it. You'll see what's there and then back out at any point. It will not mark anything or mark completed or incomplete or anything against you. That is a tool they don't mention very often that is great when you're new at it. That's all.
Yeah. I used to talk about how there was a cartoon when I was young where some kids got lost in a cave and they had taken a ball of yarn and unraveled it behind them so they could follow the yarn back to the beginning of the cave. But somebody messed up and the ball of yarn didn't get tied and they couldn't make it back to the cave. This is the way you get back to the beginning of the cave, is click that logo.